The story begins on an ordinary afternoon in a small town, the kind of place where everyone seems to know everyone, yet people often walk past each other without really seeing what is happening around them. A teenage girl who was on her way home from school walked the same street every day. She usually moved quickly, eager to get home, finish her homework, and rest. But on this particular day, something made her slow down. There, near the little bakery on the corner, sat the same homeless man she had been noticing for months. He always sat on the same step, leaning against the wall with a small bag beside him. He never bothered anyone. He simply stayed quiet, observing the world passing by, almost as if he was invisible. Most people walked around him without looking. Some even changed their path to avoid passing too close to him. But the girl never felt afraid of him. She didn't know why, but she always felt a small tug in her heart whenever she saw him. Today he looked different. He looked weaker, like the cold had finally gotten to him. His hands were shaking, and he couldn't even lift his face properly. It wasn't just a rough day. It looked like he was at his breaking point. The girl stopped walking. She took a slow breath, watching him carefully. Something inside her refused to let her walk away. She didn't have much money in her pocket, just the money she had saved by skipping snacks at school. But to her it was enough to help someone who needed it more. She entered the bakery, and the warmth of the place made her realize how cold it actually was outside. She walked to the counter and bought a warm meal, fresh bread, soup, and a bottle of water. She chose food that would keep him warm, even after the steam faded. When she walked out, the man didn't notice her at first. His eyes were half closed. She walked slowly toward him, not wanting to scare him. When she reached him, she gently said, "Sir, I brought something for you." He looked up with heavy eyes. For a moment, he didn't speak. He simply stared at her, as if trying to understand whether she was real or just another dream created by his tired mind. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "For me?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said, handing him the warm bag. "Please eat. You look like you need it." He took the bag carefully, almost as if he was afraid it might disappear. His fingers trembled as he opened it. When the smell of warm soup reached him, tears welled up in his eyes. He looked at her again, this time with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "You're very kind," he whispered. She smiled softly. "It's nothing. You just need something warm." As he began eating, she didn't walk away. Instead, she sat nearby on the sidewalk, giving him space but not abandoning him. She didn't talk much, afraid of making him uncomfortable, but she stayed because sometimes the quiet presence of another human being is more comforting than any words. The man ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it was the first real meal he had eaten in weeks. After a while, he looked at her and cleared his throat. "Nobody really stops for me," he said, wiping the corner of his mouth with the sleeve of his old jacket. "People think I'm dangerous, or lazy, or something else." She shook her head. "You're a person. Everyone deserves kindness." He became silent for a moment. His eyes drifted toward the street, as if he was remembering something from long ago. Then he said quietly, "I wasn't always here, you know." She looked at him with attention, not forcing him to speak but showing that she was willing to listen. "I had a normal life once," he continued. "A job, a family, a small home. Nothing fancy, but it was mine." His voice dropped lower. "Then everything changed after an accident. It took away my health, my work, and slowly everything else." His words were not bitter. They were tired, worn out, but honest. He wasn't trying to create a dramatic story. He was simply telling the truth. The girl listened carefully. Her heart felt heavy, but she didn't show pity, only respect. She didn't interrupt him, didn't ask questions, didn't rush him. She just let him speak at his own pace. "After that," he went on, "I couldn't keep my job. And when I couldn't work, everything fell apart. It happens faster than people think." He let out a rough breath. "One small fall, and suddenly the whole life you built has cracks everywhere." For a moment she didn't know what to say, but she didn't need to. Her silence wasn't cold. It was warm, understanding, and strangely, it made him feel comfortable. He looked at her again. "You know, you're the first person who sat down next to me in a long time." She shrugged gently. "Sometimes people need someone to sit with them." He smiled faintly, something rare for him. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of relief, like a weight had been lifted from his chest. The sun started to set, and the air became colder. The girl noticed the man's hands shaking again. She took off her scarf and placed it around his shoulders softly. "Here, it's cold," she said. He immediately tried to give it back. No, you need this more than I do." "I'll be fine," she said. "Please keep it." He hesitated, then finally nodded, gently pulling the scarf closer around himself. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're very kind." She stood up slowly, brushing dust off her uniform. I should go home now, she said, but I'll check on you again. The man looked up at her, eyes soft but serious. One day, he said in a trembling voice, I'll repay your kindness. I don't know how, or when, but I will. She smiled. You don't have to repay anything. Just take care of yourself. As she walked away, she glanced back and saw him still sitting there, holding her scarf tightly, food warm in his hands, hope returning to his tired eyes. She didn't realize it yet, but she had just changed something in his life, something big, something he would carry with him long after that day was gone. Her simple act wasn't just a meal or a scarf. It was dignity. It was respect. It was humanity. And for him, that was everything he had been missing. She went home that evening without telling anyone what she had done. She didn't feel the need to. Her act wasn't for attention or praise. It was simply because her heart couldn't leave someone suffering when she could help. Little did she know, that one small gesture of kindness would soon return to her in a way she never expected. A way that would change her own life as well. A few days passed after the evening when the girl had given the homeless man food and her scarf. She continued walking home the same way, and each day she looked forward to seeing him again. She didn't know why exactly. Maybe she liked checking on him, or maybe she just felt a strange, warm connection with the way he spoke so honestly. Whatever the reason, she hoped he was doing better. Every time she passed the little bakery, she slowed down, looking at the spot where he always sat. Some days he was there eating something slowly or just sitting quietly with her scarf wrapped around his shoulders. Other days he looked a little better, like the meal she gave him had given him strength. Whenever she brought him something, sometimes food, sometimes socks, sometimes just a warm drink, he always thanked her like she had done something huge. And each time she just smiled and said, "It's okay." She didn't think of herself as a hero or someone special. To her, kindness was simple, natural, something everyone should offer whenever they could. But one afternoon, something felt different. She approached the corner where the bakery stood, expecting to see his familiar figure resting on the same step. Instead, the spot was completely empty. The old blanket he usually sat on was gone. His small bag wasn't there either. Even the little plastic cup near his feet, which sometimes held a few coins, was missing. At first, she stopped walking and simply stared at the empty space. She thought maybe he had gone for a walk or gotten up to stretch. But as minutes passed, the silence around the corner felt strange. Something in her chest tightened. She wasn't sure if it was confusion or worry, maybe both. The next day she checked again. Still empty. The day after that, nothing. On the third day, her worry grew stronger. She tried asking a shop owner nearby if he had seen the man. The shopkeeper shrugged and said, "He was here for a long time. Haven't seen him since the morning 2 days ago. Maybe he moved to another place." That answer didn't comfort her. She had seen how weak he had been. He could hardly stand some days. If he moved to another place, where did he go? Did something bad happen? Was he sick? Did someone force him away? She walked home with a heavy heart. She kept replaying their conversations in her mind, the way he spoke softly, the way he thanked her, the way he promised he'd repay her kindness someday. She didn't care about the promise. She just wanted to know he was safe somewhere, not suffering alone. A week passed. Then too, eventually, she started accepting that maybe she wouldn't see him again. She didn't talk to anyone about it, but her family noticed she looked a little quieter than usual. She didn't explain anything. She wasn't even sure how to explain it. How could she tell them she missed someone she had barely known? Someone who lived on the street, someone who most people ignored. But sometimes, the smallest interactions leave the biggest marks on the heart. Then, 1 month later, something unexpected happened. She came home from school on a sunny afternoon. She walked into the living room and saw her mother holding an envelope. The envelope was worn, a little bent, and had her name written on it in shaky handwriting. "This came for you," her mother said. "For me?" she asked, surprised. She didn't receive letters often, especially not ones that looked like they had been through a long journey. She sat down on the couch and slowly opened it. The moment she unfolded the paper inside, she felt a jolt in her chest. She recognized the handwriting. It was from the homeless man. Her hands trembled slightly as she began reading. He started by thanking her for what she had done. He wrote about how her kindness had touched him more than she could imagine. He explained that on the day she found his spot empty, a local outreach worker had approached him. He had always refused help before, thinking he didn't deserve it or that nothing would change. But after her kindness, he felt something inside him shift. He said that her warm food, her gentle words, and even her scarf reminded him that he wasn't invisible, that he still mattered, that someone cared without expecting anything back. and because of that, he finally said yes when the worker offered help. He wrote that he had been taken to a shelter, where he received medical attention. They treated his leg, helped him get proper rest, and connected him with a relative he hadn't spoken to in years, someone who agreed to help him recover. Your kindness, he wrote, gave me the courage to accept a second chance. As she read, tears formed in her eyes, not out of sadness but out of relief. She was happy, truly happy that he was finally safe. At the end of the letter, he wrote something else, something simple but powerful. I don't know how life will change from here, but if it becomes better, it will be because a kind young girl reminded me that I was still worth something. If you ever feel alone in your life, remember your kindness changed someone's future. You changed mine. Pinned inside the letter was a small folded piece of paper that said, "You made me feel human again." She sat quietly for a long time after reading it. Her mother watched her, trying to understand what was going on. "Are you okay?" her mother asked softly. She nodded, wiping her eyes and smiling. "Yes, I'm okay, more than okay." Days passed after receiving the letter, and she kept it in a safe place on her desk. Sometimes she reread it before bed, remembering the quiet afternoons by the bakery, the conversations they shared, and the day she gave away her scarf without thinking twice. But life had one more surprise waiting for her. A few weeks later, at school, she was called to the principal's office. Her heart raced. She had never been called there before and didn't know what to expect. When she walked in, she found her principal smiling warmly. There were a few teachers standing nearby, along with two people she didn't recognize. Her principal motioned for her to sit. "We learned something wonderful about you," he said. She looked confused. "About me? One of the volunteers from the shelter contacted us," he continued. "They told us about the kindness you showed to a man who needed help. They told us how your small actions changed his life. And because of that, a local charity wants to honor you." She widened her eyes. She didn't expect anything like this. She hadn't helped the man for recognition. She didn't even tell anyone what she had done. She had just followed her heart. That charity representative stepped forward and explained that every year they choose someone who shows exceptional kindness without expecting anything in return. This year they wanted to give the honor and a scholarship to her. She was shocked. Her hands trembled slightly as they handed her a certificate. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you, but I didn't do anything big." The principal smiled gently. Sometimes the smallest kindness creates the biggest change. A few days later, the charity held a small ceremony to honor her. It wasn't fancy, but it was meaningful. Her parents attended, proud beyond words. Teachers clapped, students cheered, and among the crowd, hidden near the back, someone else was watching. It was the man she had helped. He looked healthier now, cleaner, standing with a walking stick, but standing proudly. When she noticed him, her breath caught for a moment. She walked toward him slowly, unsure if he would recognize her, but he did. He smiled warmly, his eyes shining. "I told you," he said softly. "One day I'd repay your kindness." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." "No," he replied, "but you changed my life, and I wanted to be here to say thank you." Their conversation was simple, but the moment was powerful. Everyone who saw them felt the message deeply. Sometimes one small act of kindness doesn't just help someone survive, a date can give them back their future. And for the girl, that day became a reminder she would carry forever. That kindness, even the quiet kind, can change lives in ways no one ever expects.